Thanks, Eric. Is this mic? This is the mic. I'm not going to try to match Lisa's enthusiasm. I work for government. We're not actually allowed to be that enthusiastic. Um, I'm really grateful to have the opportunity to be here today and to share this discussion with you from the Tk'emlúps to Secwépemc territory situated on the unceded ancestral lands of the Secwépemc Nation. I do want to take a minute to really appreciate the work of Louise and Ryan and the team. This is really a monumental event, and I hope that we can live up to the moment. It's really great to see a lot of familiar faces, and yesterday, connecting with many of you last night and this morning has been absolutely fantastic. But for those of you that don't know me, and thank you, Eric, for that introduction, I've been working in outdoor recreation for most of the past 30 years, since I first was a co-op student with the Ministry of Forests in 1996. I've worked in the municipal government side. I've worked in the private sector as a consultant. I did a 3-year stint in U.S. national parks, and then I spent the last 20 years in the provincial government, mostly with Rec Sites and Trails, and more recently with BC Parks and Rec Sites and Trails in the new organization. As Eric mentioned, for the past 3 years, I've been the executive lead of recreation strategy and service transformation, working to get to sort of this moment that we have today. And so I'm really honored to be able to announce today the recreation strategy that we're going to talk about. Do we have a slide presentation? Sorry, I should have looked at that. Oh, I'm in charge. I'm getting a signal from the back. Ha! I have the power. Awesome. Before I answer this question, I'm going to share with you a critical moment that I had on Monday. It was a really, by the way, I live in Squamish. It was a really great long weekend in Squamish. The weather was really nice. I had gotten a short mountain bike ride in on Saturday, but mostly I spent the weekend working in the garden, assembling a greenhouse, mowing the lawn. We sort of have a joke in Squamish that during long weekends, it's really good in the summer to just shelter in place in the sea to sky. But it was a beautiful evening. It was about 5:30. Everything was done. My family had been away in Whistler. No one was expecting dinner. And I'd seen a post earlier in the day from Ted Tempany, who I know is here today somewhere, at Dream Wizards, who had built Half Nelson. And he had posted that it was the 16-year anniversary of the Half Nelson mountain bike trail, which was a pretty momentous event for us in Squamish 16 years ago. So I had this moment of like, I'm going to get a quick ride in, quick lap. It's going to be the end of the long weekend before what I knew was going to be a very busy, very intense week. So I ripped up to the parking lot, jumped on my bike. And of course, you know, if you're pedaling uphill, you have a lot of time to think. For some of us that are pretty slow, you have a lot of time to think. So I was thinking a lot about this keynote speech, about all the things it took to get here. And for those of you that don't work in government, for those of you that might imagine, to get to a moment like this, there's a lot of submissions, a lot of briefing notes, a lot of meeting notes. And in throughout those notes, we and my team here with Neve and Carrie, we write a lot about the value proposition for government. We use terms like economic well-being and thriving communities and community health and well-being, and those are all incredibly important things that I'm going to spend the next 30 minutes talking about. So those were kind of on my mind. I get up to the top of the trail to Half Nelson, I slam my seat. It had rained on Friday night, so it was absolutely beautiful conditions, and it's a beautiful trail. And about halfway down, I'm having so much fun. And you know, I think one of the questions Ted asked in his post was, how many times have you ridden this trail in 16 years? And for me, tons. And yet it was as fun as it had ever been. And so the moment I had was, this is fun. And yes, there are all the collective sort of value propositions around outdoor recreation, but what we have to remember is that the reason we often do it is because it's just so fun. But I think that's really important because at the heart of outdoor recreation is the experience. And if the experience is great, then all the other things follow. But if it's not, well, you know where we are. So as we talk about this, let's not forget that sometimes, so that was the critical moment for me. Let's not forget that whatever your fun is, whatever it is that makes it fun for you, that is at the heart of what we're doing here. So with that, I'm going to, first of all, answer this question. Is this a critical moment for outdoor recreation in BC? It is. And I guess this would be a pretty lame presentation if it wasn't. Got a lot of things in my hands here. So forgive me with this crowd if I spend a few minutes telling you what you already know, but we are in a position of incredible strength in British Columbia. BC is unparalleled when it comes to diversity of landscapes. We have 95 million hectares. We have over 27,000 kilometers of incredible coastline. We have front country, back country, we have forests, we have grasslands, spectacular alpines, lakes, and rivers. BC has invested billions of dollars in infrastructure that supports outdoor recreation. We have the largest provincial or state park system in North America, aside from the two national systems. So we're larger than any US or Canadian national park system by a large margin. We have over 20,000 campsites, hundreds of thousands of kilometers of the best trails in the world. We have backcountry facilities and lodges and resource roads that are critical for access. This is the billions of dollars of investments that we have that make this province great. But perhaps the greatest strength that we have in this province is the network of community and recreation organizations, evidenced by this room. It's not the same in every jurisdiction. BC is a bucket list destination. We have all sorts of activities that are at the top of the world in terms of destinations. Mountain biking, mountain snowmobiling, mechanized skiing, our alpine hikes and lakes, our river experiences, our water experiences, our marine trails are all bucket list opportunities. And BC is leading in the development of craft equipment and gear for real outdoor pursuits and recreation. And we're seeing that here today with the folks from CORE and SOAR and in all of the incredible clusters of gear manufacturers emerging in communities like the Kootenays and the Sea to Sky. And I live in Squamish, and it's evidence every day. But we have some challenges. Agencies like BC Parks and Recreation Sites and Trails are struggling with capacity and funding to meet the rising costs and the increasing demand. Community and volunteer organizations, all of you are in the same boat, and we know that. Climate impacts to infrastructure are having a major impact. Both BC Parks and Recreation Sites and Trails have full-time teams dedicated to disaster recovery. Think about the Berg Lake Trail, the Juan de Fuca Trail, the Othello Tunnels, Kettle Valley Rail Trail. Shifts in the forest industry are changing and impacting forest road access, that critical backbone of outdoor recreation in BC that we depend on. BC, outdoor recreation in BC has co-evolved with the Forest Resource Roads Network. And this is critically important, and I know many of you know that. There's a little question that land management is becoming increasingly complex with so many interests on the land base, and that impacts how we manage and access outdoor recreation. So, to leverage BC's natural advantages and strong foundation and to address these challenges, the Ministry of Environment and Parks, working with other agencies like Jobs and Economic Growth and the Ministry of Tourism, Arts, Culture and Sport, and 5 other agencies that we're working with, is announcing and releasing here today, Look West, BC's outdoor recreation strategy. The strategy supports Look West, the province's economic strategy, and is aligned with the Tourism Sector Action Plan and Destination BC's corporate strategy. The Look West strategy recognizes tourism and outdoor recreation as one of 8 critical sectors in the province. That's a really big deal. And it's a bit government-y, but the fact that the province's economic strategy has recognized outdoor recreation and tourism as one of the 8 core sectors driving the economy of the province is really important. The strategy starts by setting out a vision for British Columbia as a place where outdoor recreation is a way of life, connecting people to nature, supporting health and well-being, and helping communities thrive. This vision recognizes, as we've already heard today, that outdoor recreation is central to BC's identity, and that by connecting people to nature through outdoor recreation, we inspire stewardship, we improve health and well-being, and we contribute to thriving communities. As you'll see in a moment, or I'm going to talk about for the next 20 or so minutes, the strategy sets out a number of targets and actions. But the strategy does two things that I think are possibly the most important that I really want to emphasize here today. And I just talked about this a moment ago. The strategy recognizes outdoor recreation as a sector in its own right. And secondly, the strategy sets out an all-of-government approach to outdoor recreation. When we did the initial, and interestingly enough, public engagement and group engagement around the outdoor recreation strategy, which was 3 years ago and was actually in this building, I think it was June of 2023, one of the key things that we heard was that people want government to be working together across the multiple agencies. And so I'll expand on that in a moment. The third thing, in addition to those two things that we want, that we've tried to do with this strategy, and this gets back to my Huff Nelson moment, is to focus on the foundational elements of core super experiences. We want to make sure that outdoor recreation is great experiences. In 2023, outdoor recreation contributed $4.8 billion to the provincial economy, representing 1.5% of GDP and over $17 billion in total revenue earned. $3.2 billion in paid wages and salaries in the outdoor recreation sector. Over half of British Columbians say that being close to outdoor recreation influences where they choose to live. I suspect in this room that number's like 99. There's maybe one person in the room that didn't think about that. I know here that I'm talking to the choir, so I don't need to convince you that there is an outdoor recreation economy. But it is critically important that we are able to convince other people across government and across our communities, in our local governments, that there is a recreation economy. And I feel a lot of momentum around that today. The Look West strategy and our BC outdoor recreation strategy take us in that direction. There are a couple really important considerations when we think about how outdoor recreation investments impact our British Columbia economy. First of all, the opportunity is distributed in pretty much every part of BC, every community. So outdoor recreation is an opportunity that is available across the province. It's not specific to one area where there's really great mining or specific forest tenures. Almost every community in British Columbia has the opportunity for outdoor recreation. As well, when we're talking about outdoor recreation, we are talking about, in many cases, shorter timelines for transformative opportunities. So when we're talking about large industrial developments that might take a decade to permit and to develop and to see return on investment, we know of stories in communities like Valemount and in communities like Nakusp and in many of our communities that we've seen transformational opportunities arise from projects that have taken a year to develop. A new trail gets built. So this is kind of the paradox of being in a time of fiscal challenge and why this is a critical moment for outdoor recreation. Because we have this fiscal challenge, yet outdoor recreation becomes a solution for communities, particularly in rural British Columbia. The second thing that I talked about is coordinated leadership and this thing that we're sort of calling a whole of government approach. In a challenging fiscal environment where there is limited funding, there is real strength that comes from bringing coordinated leadership across the sector, both inside government and across the sector. Yesterday, some of you may have seen that there was an announcement of the Outdoor Sector Coalition. This is a coming together of businesses, public recreation organizations, nonprofits, local and regional governments, education institutions. In the 30 years that I've been in this business, I've never seen anything like it. This is bringing together all the many groups that have been working together and sort of having some relationship into a single relationship, and it's absolutely incredible. And I really want to welcome also into that sort of fold the folks on the manufacturing and the tech and the gear, and seeing them here with the core and the rehab tents is just really, really fantastic. And thanks for participating in this new coalition. In the early sort of foundational discussions around this coalition, we had Bill Tam, who's the co-chair of the Digital Technology Supercluster. So he had some experience in bringing together sector organizations, and he was telling us a little bit about it. One of the things that he said, and these words really resonated with me, he said, sectors don't become effective because they are large. They are effective because they act like a sector. So I think this is the beginning of that work, and yesterday's announcement is the beginning of that. So the Outdoor Sector Coalition is a step in that direction. In addition to that opportunity to bring together groups outside of government, we have convened a cross-ministry outdoor recreation coordinating committee. That includes the Ministry of Environment and Parks, who is chairing that committee, tourism, arts, culture, sport, jobs, economic growth, water, land, resource stewardship, Ministry of Transportation and Transit, Ministry of Health, and Destination BC. And so we're now coordinating across government, and we're all super excited about this opportunity. Outdoor recreation offers a unique role in reconciliation. In our engagement with First Nations through development of this strategy, in connecting directly with over 30 nations and putting together an Indigenous Outdoor Recreation Working Group, we heard that First Nations shared that outdoor recreation takes place in areas that are not simply places of leisure, but living lands with deep cultural significance. Working with communities ensures that recreation in these places is respectful and supports strong stewardship outcomes. We also heard from nations how important it is that outdoor recreation create opportunities for youth in community, and that there are some great examples of where that work has already happened. And I know Roxanne is here today from the Lilwat with some great examples of how engaging youth in outdoor recreation provides incredible examples. We want to do more of that. We want to support communities to help create those opportunities. And lastly, we heard from many nations an interest in increasing participation in the outdoor recreation economy. And so working with groups like Indigenous Tourism BC and the Ministry of Tourism, supporting some of the actions with the Tourism Sector Action Plan, looking at how we can do that as well. So this is in fact a critical moment for outdoor recreation in BC. This strategy sets out 5 priorities: inspiring action, deliver experiences, invest in growth, support people, and protect what we love. To deliver on these 5 priorities, the strategy sets out 17 targets and 29 specific actions to be delivered by the province and with the support of the broader sector. In other words, we're going to need all of you to do this. This is not just a government strategy. Our first priority is to inspire action. Inspiring action is about collaboration, it's about research, and it's about storytelling. It starts here. It starts in this week that we have where we're building all of this momentum. It's about bringing the groups together through those 2 mechanisms that I talked about, the Outdoor Sector Coalition and the Cross-Ministry Committee. It also means that we have good information, so it's around research and data. I'm really pleased to talk about an initiative that is a joint tourism, arts, culture, and sport, jobs, economic growth, and Ministry of Environment and Parks initiative called the BC Outdoor Recreation Satellite Account. This is a very robust initiative to get economic data, working with BC Stats as well, that we can repeatedly acquire and make available to everybody on an annual basis to help us tell the story about the opportunities that we create and other areas of research that we can look into. And then figuring out how we can coordinate the narrative and tell our stories about the opportunities that we provide. Delivering experiences gets back to what I was talking about with my Half Nelson story, and it's focusing on the core element that will make us successful, having great experiences. It's about services, access, systems, and our destinations. This priority focuses on strengthening and improving how BC Parks and Recreation Sites and Trails, the 2 largest providing organizations in government, deliver our services and how we operate. We also set out an intention to address the critical challenge of resource road access. For those of you, and I know there's many of you in this room that have been around for a long time, this isn't our first shot at trying to solve this problem. One of the first things that I did in around 2008 was participate on an Assistant Deputy Minister's Committee on Resource Road Access. It's not an easy problem to solve. We have 100 years of history of how resource roads are managed and maintained. They're legislated and they're regulated, but we have to bring innovative solutions to how we think about resource road access, because I think we've all seen, particularly in the last number of years, that things are changing quickly. And so it's something we have to focus on. And I look forward to working with you on finding those innovative solutions and looking at solutions that don't rest simply with government. I think there's going to be a panel discussion, well, I know because I'm in it, on Friday afternoon where we can discuss that. So I look forward to more discussion about that. Every time that I see an outside magazine article about the 10 greatest hikes in the world or the 10 greatest, experiences, and I don't see BC on that list, I get frustrated. BC has iconic trails. Think about the Sunshine Coast Trail. Think about the Juan de Fuca Trail. Think about so many of our amazing trails, the Berg Lake Trail. We have iconic trails. We have significant investment in iconic trails. We need to do better at making those opportunities really resonate for the communities that have those. And look for what more opportunities would be great. Investing in growth focuses existing grant programs in the Ministry of Jobs and Economic Growth to boost leading outdoor gear and rec tech manufacturing clusters. So we're really excited about the opportunity to think holistically about outdoor recreation sector, including the benefits that we get from gear and technology. There's a reason that these companies are locating in our communities like Golden and Revelstoke and Squamish. And we've heard from these manufacturers that having access to real world testing grounds is incredibly important for these really authentic products. So we're getting this really great feedback loop and ecosystem around that. So we're really excited about that. Investing in growth will also remove barriers to permitting to grow outdoor recreation economy and expand on innovative approaches. Many of you have heard about the Adventure Tourism Hub announced last month by the province around trying to improve permitting for adventure tourism, and the Ministry of Environment and Parks is continuing to work on improving permitting for park use permits and for trail and recreation authorizations. It's continuing work, it's difficult work. It comes back to that complexity of the land base that we know we have, but the ministries are committed to doing this work to create more opportunities. And this is also where we are going to set out actions to specifically expand opportunities for Indigenous communities participating in the outdoor recreation economy. So this is how we're going to invest in growth. To me, this is almost one of the most important priorities that we have. This is about supporting the people. This is about supporting you and the organizations that we depend on for the great outdoor recreation that we have in British Columbia. Supporting people recognizes the contributions that the community recreation organizations and volunteers make to the sector. And it sets out actions to try and create that capacity that is so critical in communities, particularly for trail organizations. We understand and we know how critical your work is and the capacity and funding that's required to make that happen, to make that sustainable. So we want to look at innovative funding models, and that work is already underway. We've got to think a little bit bigger. We've got to think a little bit broader than we have. In a time of fiscal constraint, just hoping that program budgets like Rec Sites and Trails and BC Parks budgets are going to be able to make up the difference. We've got to be a bit more creative than that. We've got to look at the sector as a whole. So that's some of the work that we're going to do there. We know that we can leverage the immense capacity and enthusiasm that is abundant in communities. We also want to make sure that we increase the involvement of our Indigenous communities in some of that work and create some of those opportunities. Our fifth priority, and I actually think, Lisa, you used almost these exact words today in your presentation. It's about protecting what we love. One of the other things that we heard when we did that initial engagement in those 4 engagement sessions over 2023 was that stewardship and outdoor recreation go hand in hand. They are not two separate things. There is not a conservation versus recreation debate, which some of the literature tells us has always been the thing. Stewardship and recreation go hand in hand. We get conservation, we get stewardship-minded people because they participate in outdoor recreation, because they have exposure to natural environments. Yes, we have to find balances, and yes, we have to make trade-offs, and yes, we have to make responsible decisions. But really, we know that people expect outdoor recreation to be respectful and to create opportunities to make sure we're protecting the environment. So in order to do that, we want to integrate recreation values in the planning processes. This has been a long-term objective of Outdoor Recreation Council of BC, to making sure that recreation values are considered in our land use planning, in our forest operations planning, and in our landscape planning. We also want to strengthen the integration of recreation values in some of the work and the planning going into the province's conservation mandate, particularly the 30 by 30 and the nature agreement. And so making sure that we're looking at how recreation access and recreation values are incorporated into that work, and what the new opportunities may arise from those conservation areas. We also want to build on the success of visitor use management approach to address high use and high value areas. For those of you not aware, the Ministry of Environment and Parks has been working through various projects to implement visitor use management as a more holistic approach to how we can address some of the challenges, whether it's around high day use, high visitation, bear management, and all sorts of other challenges through a more systematic and robust framework. It takes a lot of capacity to implement visitor use management framework projects, but it's a really promising approach, and so we want to expand and build on that work. Finally, we know that monitoring, compliance, and enforcement is a critical component of outdoor recreation. And we know that the capacity and resources for compliance, monitoring, and enforcement is limited. So that's another area where we have to look at where we can find solutions. I think the success of the Newhawk Kitasoo Hey Hey Guardian pilot program is a real opportunity for us to consider what those opportunities are there. So those are our 5 priorities. All of you have on your tables, there's a card with a QR code. I believe those links should be live this morning. If you go to that QR code, you should find the actual strategy itself with a whole bunch of supporting information. I want to take a moment here to acknowledge Carrie and Neve, and I'm actually going to force them to stand up. Well, not force, I'm going to ask them to stand up because, and the reason is I want you to be able to find them over the course of the next 2 days, know who they are, ask them questions. They have done the heavy lifting in this, and they have a wealth of information and ideas that they can share with you. Over the last 3 years, you all have done so much engagement with us. You have helped to shape this, inform this, and I'm actually going to, in the moment, say it's not just been 3 years. I've been working with many of you for at least 20 years. So what the discussions that we've had over 20 years, the random emails that I get sent, and thank you for those, particularly Powder Matt. You're really good at those. I love them. They're all found and they're all shaped by the work that we have here. So with that, I hope that you find inspiration there. I hope that it sets out this and takes advantage of this critical opportunity that I think we have. I think Louise said something like, let's ask the hard questions. Let's ask not super hard questions, but I think we have some questions. Let's have some.
Hi, John. Thank you for the presentation. I just had one question, and I might have missed it. On the cross-ministry committee, I didn't hear Ministry of Forests in that list.
Yeah.
And I personally think that would be a really important one to be on that committee. I'm just wondering why they weren't
Yeah, I agree. So first of all, the committee is a big tent committee. We will have anyone who wants to join. Ministry of Forests has been engaged with us. We've shared the strategy with them. I think right now, if you're familiar with what's going on in the Ministry of Forests, there's just a little bit of organizational kind of changing and shifting. And so I think that the primary question, when Rec Sites and Trails came out of the Ministry of Forests in 2022, there's sort of some question around like where does it kind of fit? Does it fit with sort of regional operations folks, or does it fit with the sort of the chief forester's office? because recreation is a forest value. So we're just working that piece out. I'm confident that we will have Ministry of Forests in our tent.
That leads me to my second question is, you're announcing this to all of us today. I'm assuming government has seen this ahead of time. How is the buy-in from all of the government that you've spoken to, besides those in the cross ministry?
Yeah, of course, discussions in places like cabinet are confidential, but I can tell you that there's a lot of excitement. I think that we've done a good job, and I'll thank my colleagues for that in helping to build the narrative around why this is so important. And to the degree that I can tell you that there's unanimous support. We haven't heard anyone say that this isn't a great idea. And I want to thank the Outdoor Sector Coalition and Andy Day, who's there, and Louise. For those folks that don't know, in the fall, I believe it was just before Christmas, the Outdoor Sector Coalition sent a letter to the Premier asking for two things: for consideration of outdoor recreation and tourism in Look West, the province's economic plan, and for government to work to convene a cross-government committee, and we got those two things. So that's a really, really big deal. And so, and I think that the reason that government took that opportunity was recognizing how important this sector is and seeing examples. And so this is where you all come in, actually seeing, like, you'd be surprised how many elected officials have examples of having seen transformative things happen in communities. And I get those examples brought to me all the time. Like, oh, I heard about, or I was out and I saw, and I get told a story that often involves your names. So lots and lots of support to answer your question more concisely.
My name's Peter Kylo. I'm from the town of Mackenzie. And on Williston Lake is a Forest Service road, the West Parston Forest Service Road. There's a number of wreck sites on there. And there's trails going up the mountains that when you guys stop funding it, when you guys stop paying the money to take down the danger trees, volunteers went up and kept the trails open. There's a Forest Service road going to Finley Bay, which is a very popular access site for boats. It brings people in from Saskatchewan, people in from Chilliwack, people from Alberta. It's very popular. It's not a large number of people, but it's a very popular area. Excuse me. 3 years ago, there was a washout in the bridge on the road going there. It's a 95-kilometer road. And we offered to fix the road. And the government refused. They said it was too expensive, said it needed a new bridge. I went out and I bought a bridge, and the government wouldn't let me replace it. They said there was 2 bridges needed to be replaced. So I bought a second bridge. And I went to get it, and they said no. I have property up there. I have a timber mark on that property. And by the Forest Service rules, they say you have to give me access to the timber mark. They stalled me for 2 years before I got access to this road. Then they went and gave me the timber mark. For every problem that I solved that the ministry gave me, they came up with every solution I came up with, they invented a new problem. So there's a large number of people that want access to Williston Lake, to Forest Service rec sites. We have been willing to spend our money. I've been willing to take my time and spend my money to get the road open. So if you say that you are willing to collaborate with people willing to keep the road open, will you work with me?
Short answer, yes. When I listed on a number of slides back, sort of like the 5 biggest challenges that I see in outdoor recreation, and they weren't in any particular order on that slide, this issue of access and forest road maintenance is one of them. It's not just, and I really appreciate, and it sounds like you're a solutions guy, and what you're talking about in terms of buying bridges, incredible. It's not just a funding problem. It's a legislative, it's a regulatory issue, it's a liability issue, it's a long-term maintenance question. So we have to find a sort of a policy and a regulatory solution to the current structure that is sort of 100 years of history with resource road maintenance and management. So the answer is yes, I will work with you. I don't think, with the time we have now that we can really get into an in-depth conversation. I'd love to catch up with you afterwards and hear a little bit more about it. But again, and I think to your point around the Ministry of Forests has to be part of this conversation. I'm in regular conversation with the Director of Engineering in the Ministry of Forests, and this is the problem of the day for sure. Sure.
Hi, John. Can you hear me? Gavin Connor. I'm just curious if this will help more with funding, larger fund for infrastructure. For instance, I work a lot in Mackenzie and Tumbler Ridge where they're doing trail networks. And for the full trail networks vision, it's probably $5 million in trail building. It's for camping, parking, and everything. And then tying these circuit routes, you're looking at around like 30 million for these visions to come to life. So is there a direct approach now for funding opportunities to do larger, like $20 million fundings of these projects versus single REDUP grants, dispersed across $500,000 that only get a bit of trail build?
I think the short answer is no. And that's part of the challenge, right? That's the fiscal environment that we're in. That I'm not sure there was ever a time when government was in a position to sort of fund a $20 million or even a $5 million build out. Certainly programs like BC Parks and Recreation Trails do have capital budgets, but even those are incredibly tapped in terms of priorities. So when we get back to sort of this investing and supporting the people, that's what we're talking about. We're talking about having to look at how is the system funded overall, who's contributing, who's benefiting, and what are the more innovative funding solutions. I think two of the problems that I see, particularly for recreation organizations, is inability to plan for the future because of the unstable and unpredictable funding. And one of the things that I've noticed is that many outdoor recreation organizations are constantly applying for initiative or project type funding, but it's very difficult for an organization to get funding just to support having a paid executive director just for capacity. So there's no initiative, there's no new project, there's no ribbon cutting at the end of the thing that they're applying for. But to be able to say, hey, look, we're just an organization that is basically providing trails for our community, but also for potentially hundreds of thousands of tourists, and we need capacity funding. And so how do we find that, and who's contributing? And if the answer is simply government, Ministry of Environment and Parks, that's not going to get us anywhere, not in the current fiscal environment that we're in, and certainly looking out for the next 5 years. So we've got to be creative. Thank you.
Thanks, John.